What if I told you there was a plane so bizarre that it redefined what we thought was possible in aviation? Meet the Blohm Voss BV-141, the plane that dared to break all the rules, and almost succeeded in doing so. By the late 1930s, the Luftwaffe had a problem. Their reconnaissance aircraft, the Henschel HS-126, was quickly becoming outdated. The German Aviation Ministry decided it was time for innovation. They issued a challenge to manufacturers: design a single-engine, three-seat aircraft that could revolutionize the reconnaissance role. It needed exceptional visibility for the crew, enough room for photography and observation equipment, and the versatility to lay smoke screens or deliver light bombing if needed. The idea was straightforward. The execution? Not so much. While big names like Focke-Wulf and Arado stuck to tried-and-tested formulas, Blohm Voss took an entirely different route. Chief designer Dr. Richard Voigt didn't just bend the rules, he smashed them. He envisioned a design that broke away from the conventional. Instead of the traditional fuselage arrangement, he proposed splitting the aircraft into two strikingly different sections. On the left was the engine and tail boom. On the right, a gondola for the crew, enclosed with large plexiglass panels for maximum visibility. It was bold, it was striking, but it was also a gamble. To the ministry, the asymmetrical layout bordered on absurdity. Early sketches were met with disdain, with critics saying it looked more like a carpenter's mistake than an airplane. Even so, Blohm Voss pressed on. They believed in the design and went as far as to fund the development of the first prototype, called the HA-141, entirely on their own dime. It marked the beginning of one of the most unconventional aircraft projects of the war. February 25, 1938. A prototype of the HA-141 rolls down the runway for its maiden flight. It's a cold winter's day, and all eyes are on this odd-looking aircraft. Engineers hold their breath. Will it even leave the ground? To the thrill of those watching, the plane lifts off smoothly, climbing into the sky like it was meant to be there. The early flights reveal something unexpected. This asymmetrical design works. The off-balance look of the aircraft had many doubting whether it would fly at all, but thanks to precise weight distribution and meticulous aerodynamic tuning, it was surprisingly stable. The gondola's weight on one side balanced against the engine's position on the other. Even at low speeds, the plane felt controlled and agile, quelling fears that its design would lead to instability. Despite these successes, the Luftwaffe had conditions. They demanded a redesign to expand the gondola, allowing more workspace for the crew and even greater visibility. Blohm Voss took the feedback in stride, creating versions with enhanced features like more extensive glazing, advanced cameras, and room for additional equipment. By 1939, they had produced a series of pre-production models. Each one refined the design further, and pilots who flew the test planes described them as responsive and easy to handle. However, it wasn't just about flying well. The aircraft needed to prove itself useful to the people who would rely on it in the field. Reconnaissance crews. Test missions simulated everything they might encounter in combat, from observing enemy positions to aerial photography runs. At first glance, the BV-141 seemed like a success, but that optimism was about to face its greatest challenge. By 1940, the Luftwaffe had another option on the table, the Focke-Wulf FW-189. This sleek twin-engine aircraft came with a symmetrical design and an equally impressive emphasis on visibility. Its twin-boom layout and all-glass cockpit were perfect for reconnaissance missions. Under normal circumstances, two planes vying for the same role might not seem like a problem, but these weren't normal circumstances. The BV-141 already had critics calling it a misstep in aviation design. The FW-189, on the other hand, faced no such skepticism. It was safe, efficient, and most importantly for the Luftwaffe, it didn't make anyone question their engineering decisions. Additionally, the production of the FW-189 was more straightforward, making it quicker to push into service. There were also logistical hurdles unique to the BV-141. Its designers wanted to incorporate the powerful BMW 801 engine, but demand for the engine was skyrocketing due to fighter production, particularly for the Focke-Wulf 190. This meant that the BV-141 couldn't be produced in large numbers without depriving Germany's fighters of a critical resource. Despite these hurdles, the BV-141 still had merit. Reports from its test pilots were largely positive. It was easy to control and offered unparalleled visibility. However, the Luftwaffe had to decide. Would they take the risk on an unconventional aircraft or stick to the safer, more traditional FW-189? The final nail in the BV-141's coffin was more a matter of perception than performance. The Luftwaffe leadership, particularly commanders like Hermann Göring, showed no interest in the plane. Its asymmetrical design was a constant source of debate, with its defenders passionate but vastly outnumbered by its detractors. By 1941, it was clear the FW-189 would take the spotlight, and the BV-141 would slowly fade into aviation obscurity. The competition may have ended, but the BV-141 story didn't stop there. For years, it remained a symbol of what happens when designers are bold enough to push boundaries, a curiosity that continues to fascinate aviation enthusiasts to this day. At first glance, the Blohm Voss BV-141's design seemed like something out of a sketchbook gone rogue. Its asymmetrical layout was radical, but it served a purpose. By placing the crew in a gondola on the starboard side, the plane delivered something invaluable on the battlefield: visibility. Imagine sitting in a glass bubble, almost unobstructed, watching the landscape and enemy troop movements below. For reconnaissance missions, this kind of view was a game changer. The crew didn't just observe. They had tools tailored to their roles: advanced camera systems, room for mapping equipment, and designated positions for each of the 3 crew members made the BV-141 highly specialized. The pilot focused on smooth operation. The observer could gather intelligence, and the rear gunner was equipped to fend off attacks. The gondola layout gave him space and efficiency that most reconnaissance aircraft of the time sorely lacked. But with unique concepts came unique problems. The landing gear, for instance, vibrated so severely during early tests that pilots were genuinely concerned it might fail. Then there was the challenge of handling. While stable in many conditions, the plane could be tricky to control in turbulence or during rapid maneuvers. These were minor flaws compared to what Blohm Voss had achieved, but they were enough to keep the Luftwaffe wary. Perhaps the biggest flaw wasn't the plane itself, but with how it fit into the larger war effort. The Air Ministry wasn't just looking for performance. They wanted practicality. The BV-141 was more complicated to build than its competitors, and for some in the Luftwaffe, its unconventional appearance alone seemed reason enough to dismiss it. Still, the BV-141 was more than just a strange silhouette in the sky. Its design pushed engineers to explore what was possible, blending innovation with function in ways that were ahead of its time. When the original BV-141 project was rejected, Blohm Voss didn't pack up and call it a failure. They doubled down, creating a new version that addressed the earlier complaints. The result was the BV-141B, a bigger, better, and more powerful iteration of the original design. This new model swapped the earlier engine for the powerful BMW 801, a 14-cylinder radial engine capable of delivering 1,560 horsepower. On paper, it was a clear improvement, but implementing it came at a cost. The larger engine forced designers to extend the wingspan, reinforce the airframe, and make other structural changes. The rear tail was also redesigned, this time asymmetrical, as a way to give the rear gunner better field of fire without obstructing the view. Despite these updates, new challenges emerged. The added weight from the engine and structural changes meant the aircraft needed more power just to maintain its earlier performance levels. Even worse, the modifications introduced mechanical vulnerabilities. Hydraulic systems frequently failed, and vibrations from the engine created stability issues, especially during takeoff and landing. But perhaps the most damning feedback came from the test pilots. During firing trials, gunpowder fumes often filled the cockpit, causing visibility issues and discomfort for the crew. These small but persistent problems overshadowed the improvements, eroding confidence in the design. Meanwhile, time was running out. By the early 1940s, Germany was in desperate need of practical, reliable aircraft that could be quickly mass-produced. Complicated experimental designs like the BV-141B felt like a luxury the Luftwaffe couldn't afford. Production priorities shifted to proven models, like the WW189. Though a handful of BV-141Bs were built and flown, this final effort never gained the traction it needed to survive in wartime Germany's unforgiving production pipeline. The BV-141B was Blohm Voss's last major push for their unusual vision. Though technically impressive, it was a case of too little, too late. An innovative but ultimately impractical answer to the Luftwaffe's needs. For all its promise, the Blohm Voss BV-141 never became more than a small footnote in aviation history. By 1943, interest in the project had all but vanished, and no orders for mass production were issued. The 12 aircraft that were built, prototypes and pre-production models, were either lost during testing, scrapped for parts, or abandoned in the chaos of war. But failure is a tricky word. The BV-141 wasn't scrapped because it couldn't fly. Quite the opposite. It flew remarkably well for such a radical design. Pilots who tested it praised its visibility, stability, and innovative features. Instead, the plane's demise boiled down to timing, politics, and practicality. It was the right idea in the wrong circumstances. Consider this. The FW-189, the BV-141's main competitor, was already entrenched in the Luftwaffe's plans. It faced no widespread skepticism, didn't compete for engines, and it fit neatly into established production lines. Meanwhile, Blohm & Voss's lopsided design required costly retooling, ongoing adjustments, and a leap of faith from decision-makers not known for taking risks. And then there's the war itself. By the time the BV-141B was ready, Germany was in no position to invest heavily in experimental aircraft. The Luftwaffe was focused on producing fighters and bombers, leaving reconnaissance planes to rely on tried and tested designs. Simply put, by the time Blohm & Voss had perfected their concept, the Luftwaffe had moved on. But what about legacy? The Blohm & Voss BV-141 never made it into combat, but its reputation as one of the most unusual aircraft of World War II endures. It's remembered not for its practical impact, but for its imaginative leap. The asymmetric design proved that sometimes the most unconventional solutions could be surprisingly effective, even if they don't reach their full potential. Today, no examples of the BV-141 survive, but its influence lingers in the story it tells. It's a reminder that innovation often involves missteps, detours, and bold ideas that challenge conventional thinking. The fact that it was built at all and that it flew is a testament to the vision and determination of the engineers who believed in it. For that alone, the BV-141 has earned its place in the annals of aviation history. World War II brought us some of the most daring and unconventional designs, but few were as bold as the Blohm & Voss BV-141. Its legacy lies not in its service record, but in the brilliant defiance of conventional thinking. If you want to see more incredible stories from the world of aviation, hit that like button, subscribe to Tailwinds, and don't forget to join the conversation in the comments. Bye for now.